Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Amish Mindset. If you get anything from my work, I might drop an epiphany, a connected dot, a new author to read, a new book to explore. Please considering helping me out. Everything will be in the Dropbox below. Amish Mindset, please. Also, there's a link to my move fund because I can't do anything until those checks are in my hands and it's going to be very late. Still waiting on a closing date, by the way. And today is my 1 year YouTube anniversary. What better than to tackle The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall? This is going to be a tackling one for me because there's a lot of Greek and I don't know Greek. Just like I can pronounce some Hebrew words because I familiarize with the language a little bit, because I grew up in a Jewish household. But I don't know jack shit. I know a little sign language. I forgot a lot of, not that you forget, but because of my dyslexia, I mess up with the signs because it's not how we speak, it's their composition of a sentence is way different from ours. So, yeah. I'm also wearing a hat because I noticed that my energy has been fluctuating with the Schumann resonance and my light goes crazy. That's my energy. So I put the hat so that I can read the book but still see it. Now, this section of this book has it has some diagrams and stuff of that nature. Very tiny. And some words I probably won't be able to project. Those of you who are new to the channel, Allison is dyslexic. That's me. I'm dyslexic. I also can't project certain words, even simple ones, out of my mouth because of my teeth. Go watch the video that I just posted about the 1 year anniversary. I show you I take my teeth out. I look like where I was born. No offense to anybody born in Albany, Georgia, or to my family. I just happen to have bad teeth and have been poisoned. Gotta love it. So without further ado, the Bembine Tablet of Isis. A manuscript by Thomas Taylor contains the following remarkable paragraph. Quote, Plato was initiated into the great mysteries at the age of 49. Oh, so I have like 10 years. Okay, Plato, I get you. The initiation took place in one of the subterranean halls of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. The Isaac table formed the altar before which the divine Plato stood and received that which was always his, but which the ceremony of the mysteries enkindled and brought from the dormant state. With the ascent, after 3 days in the great hall, he was received by the hierophant of the pyramid. The hierophant was seen only by those who had passed the 3 days, the 3 degrees, the 3 dimensions, and given verbally the highest esoteric teachings, each accompanied with its appropriate symbol. After a further 3 months' sojourn in the halls of the pyramid, the initiate Plato was sent out into the world to do the work of the great order, as Pythagoras and Orpheus had been before him. End quote. Before the sacking of Rome in 1527, there is no historical mention of the Mensa Isica, the tablet of Isis. At that time, the tablet came into possession of a certain locksmith or ironworker, who sold it at an exorbitant price to the Cardinal Bembo, a celebrated antiquity, a historiographer. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Oh well. Of the Republic of Venice, and afterwards librarian of St. Mark's. After his death in 1547, the Isaac tablet was acquired by the home of Mantua, in whose museum it remained until 1630, when the troops of Ferdinand II captured the city of Mantua. Several early writers on the subject had assumed that the tablet was demolished by the ignorant soldiery, from the silver it contained. The assumption, however, was erroneous. The tablet fell into the hands of Cardinal Pava, who presented it to the Duke of Savoy, who in turn presented it to the King of Sardinia. When the French conquered Italy in 1797, the tablet was carried to Paris. In 1809, Alexandre Lenoir, writing of the Mensa Isica, said it was an exhibition of the Bibliothèque Nationale. Sorry, I don't do French either. Or I kind of do Spanish. Upon the establishment of peace between the two countries, it was returned to Italy. In his guide to northern Italy, Carl Bedecker describes the Mensa Isica as being in the center of Gallery 2 in the Museum of Antiquities in Turin. Already we can see I can't project, so I do apologize, guys. We can laugh. Don't worry. I won't be insulted. A faithful reproduction of the original tablet was made in 1559 by the celebrated Anicius Vicus of Parma, and a copy of the engraving was given by the Chancellor of the Duke of Bavaria, I think. Sorry, I have cat hairs on my nose. To the Museum of Hieroglyphics. What is with these freaking long ass names? Athenius Kreitzer describes a tablet as, quote, 5 palms long and 4 wide, end quote. W. Wynne Westcott says it measures 50 by 30 inches. It was made of bronze and decorated with the encaustic or small enamel and silvery inlay. Fosbrook adds, quote, the figures are cut very shallow, and the contour of most of them is encircled by threads of silver. The basis upon which the figures were seated or reclined and left blank in the prints were of silver and are torn away. Those familiar with the fundamental principles of Hermetic philosophy will recognize in the Mensa Isica the key to Chaldean, Egyptian, and Greek theology. In his Antiquities, the learned Benedictine Father Montfaucon admits his inability to cope with the intricacies of the symbolism. He therefore doubts that the emblems upon the tablet possesses any significance worthy of consideration and ridicules Krischer, declaring him to be more obscure than the tablet itself. Laurinaitis Pignoris reproduced the tablet in connection with a descriptive essay in 1605, but his timidly advanced explanations demonstrated his ignorance concerning the actual interpretation of the figures. In Oedipus Egypticus, I hope I'm saying that right, published in 1654, Krischer attacked the problem with the characteristic avidity. Being peculiarly, I said that word right, qualified for such a task for sorry guys, I can never project that word out. Peculiar. You see, now I can't do it because I focused. For such a task for years of research in matters pertaining to the secret doctrines of antiquity, and with the assistance of a group of eminent scholars, Kircher accomplished much towards an exposition of the mysteries of the tablet. The master secret, however, eluded even him, as Officius Levy has enshrinedly noted in the history of magic. Quote, the learned Jesuit, end quote, writes Levy, divined that it contained the hieroglyphic key to sacred alphabets, though he was unable to develop the explanation. It is divided into 3 equal compartments. Above are the 12 houses of heaven, and below are the corresponding distributions of labor, work periods throughout the year, while in the middle place are 21 sacred signs answering to the letters of the alphabet. In the midst of all is a seated figure of the pantomorphic IYNX, emblem of universal being and corresponding as such to the Hebrew Yod, or to that unique letter from which all the other letters were formed. The IYNX is encircled by the Orphic triad, answering to the 3 mother letters of the Egyptian and Hebrew alphabets. On the right are the emblemorphic and seraphim triads. On the left are those of the nymphs and Hecate, representing active and passive, fixed and volatile, fructifying fire and generating water. Each pair of triads, in conjunction with the center, produces a septentary, and the septentary is contained in the center. The 3 septentaries furnish the absolute number of the 3 worlds, as well as the complete number of primitive letters, to which a complementary sign is added, like 0 to the 9 numerals. Levy's hint may be construed to mean that the 21 figures in the center section of the tablet represent the 21 major trumps of the tarot cards. If this be so, is not the 0 card cause of so much controversy? The nameless crown of the supreme mind, the crown being symbolized by the hidden triad in the upper part of the throne, in the center of the table. Might not the first emanation of the supreme mind be well emblemized by a juggler or a magician with the symbols of the 4 lower worlds spread out on a table before him? The rod, the sword, the cup, the coin. This considered the 0 card belongs nowhere among the others, but is in fact the 4th dimensional point from which they all emanated, and consequently is broken up into the 21 cards, letters, which when gathered together produce the 0. The cipher appearing upon the card would substantiate this interpretation, for the cipher or circle is emblematic of the superior sphere from which issue the lower world's powers and letters. Pause. All right. So what did we learn the other day with the key of the universe that we read? The card with no number happens to actually be the Fool and not the Magician in the tarot cards. For real. I'll get, yeah, hang on. One, 0, 0, 1. Just saying, the keys of the universe, keys of destiny. Go over this. It's on my channel. Sorry, had to go there. had to go there. Regardless, but tarot changed a lot because in the older books that I've read, it does some of the meetings, like the strength card is a different number than it was in its original form when tarot was produced and made. So who knows if this was swapped? Could have been. But in modern day Rider-Waite tarot, here we go. Westcott carefully collected all too meager theories advanced by various authorities, and in 1887 published his now extremely rare volume, which contains the only detailed description of the Isaac tablet published in English since Humphreys translated Mount Falcon's worthless description in 1721. After explaining his retenence to reveal that which Levy evidently left was better left concealed, Westcott sums up his interpretation of the tablet as follows, quote, "The diagram of Levy, by which he explains the mystery of the tablet, shows the upper region divided into 4 seasons of the year, each with 3 signs of the zodiac." Excuse me. And he has added the 4-lettered secret name, the tetragrammaton, assigning Yod to Aquarius, that is Canopus. He to Taurus, this is Apis. Vow to Leo, that is Mamphata. And he finally final to Typhoon. Note the cherubic parallel: man, bull, lion, and eagle. The 4th form is found either as scorpion or eagle, depending upon the occult good or evil intention. And the demotic zodiac, the snake represents the scorpion. The lower region he ascribes to the 12 simple Hebrew letters, associating them with the 4 quarters of the horizon. Compare the Sefer Yetzirah. Quote, "The central region he ascribes to the solar powers, and the planetary in the middle we see above, the sun marked Ops, and below it is Solomon's seal. Above a cross, double triangle, hexaphala, 1 light and 1 dark triangle superposed, the whole forming a sort of complex symbol of Venus. To the emblemorphos, he gives the 3 dark planets, Venus, Mercury, and Mars, placed around the dark triangle erect, denoting fire. To the Nephilim, I don't know if I'm saying that right, triad, he gives 3 light planets, Saturn, Luna, and Jupiter, around a light inverted triangle, which denotes water. There is a necessary connection between water, female power, passive principle, Binah, and seraphic mother and bride. Note the ancient signs from the planets were all composed of a cross, solar disk, and crescent. Venus is a cross below a sun disk. Mercury, a disk with a crescent above and cross below. Saturn is a cross whose lowest point touches the apex of the crescent. Jupiter is a crescent whose lowest point touches the left-hand end of a cross. All these are deep mysteries. Note that Levy, in his original plate, transposed Separus and Hecate, but not the Apis nor an Apis block. Perhaps because of the head of Bes being associated by him with the Hecate. Note that having referred to the 12 simple letters to the lower, the 7 double must correspond to the central region of the planets. And then the great triad, AMS. The mother letters representing air, water, and fire remain to be pictured. Around S, the central links, or Yod by the Orphan triad, the 2 serpents, and the Leon Sphinx. Levy's word, OPS, is the center is the Latin ops, terra, genius of the earth, and the Greek ops, re, and kubili, Sibyl, often drawn as a goddess seated in a chariot drawn by lions. She is crowned with turrets and holds a key. So if you're lost, and I'm sure a lot of people might be, that's new to a lot of this work, go look up your birth chart, your natal chart. A lot of these symbols and these and what they're talking about is in your birth chart. It's all the symbols of the planets, where they align, the squares, the triads, all of that is in your birth chart. So all of this is still astrological. It's bouncing off of what we read before with the zodiacs. This is just how it's charted. So if you're lost, I hope that just helped you make sense out of what I'm reading. And I do apologize with the pronunciations. The essay published in French by Alex Lenore in 1809, while curious and original, contains little real information on the tablet, which the author seeks to prove with an Egyptian calendar or astrological chart. As both Montfalcon and Lenore, in fact, all writers on the subject since 1651, either have based their work upon that of Kirchner or have been influenced considerably by him, a careful translation has been made of the latter's original article. The Kirchner from the engraving in the Museum of the Hieroglyphics, the small letters and numbers used to designate the figures were added by him to clarify the commentary and will be used for the same purpose in this work. Like nearly all religious and philosophical antiquities, the Bembine tablet of Isis has been the subject of much controversy. In a footnote, A.E. Waite, unable to differentiate between the two and the purported nature or origin of the tablet, echoes the sentiments of J.G. Wilkinson, another eminent exotericus. The original is exceedingly late and is roughly termed a forgery. On the other hand, Edward Rinkelmann, a man of profound learning, defends the genuineness and antiquity of the tablet. A sincere consideration of the Mensa Ithaca discloses one fact of paramount importance, that although whoever fashioned the tablet was not necessarily an Egyptian, he was an initiate of the higher order, conservant with most arcane tenets of Hermetic esotericism. This is been going on for eons, right? A lot of things were made in antiquity, made by artists, made by philosophers and people of high rank. And then throughout the ages, things start moving, disappearing, getting stuck, getting found, broken, not broken, reworked, forgeries. There's so many things that have happened throughout the span of time that we have to question everything. All the works, all the tablets, everything. Because we just don't know if any of this is true or not, or a figment of somebody's really good imagination. It's very interesting. Symbolism of Bembine tablet. The following necessarily belief elucidation of the Bembine tablet is based upon a digest of the writings of Kircher, supplemented by another information gleaned by the present author from the mystical writings of the Chaldeans, Hebrews, Egyptians, and Greeks. The tablets of the Egyptians were so designed that the arrangement of chambers, decorations, and utensils was all symbolic significance, as shown by the hieroglyphics that covered them. Besides the altar, which usually was in the center of each room, was the cistern of the Nile water, which flowed in and out through unseen pipes. Here also were images of gods in consecrated series, accompanied by magical inscriptions. In these temples, by use of symbols and hieroglyphics, neophytes were instructed in the secrets of the sacerdotal caste. The tablet of Isis was originally a table or altar, and its emblems were part of the mysteries explained by priests. The tables were dedicated to the various gods and goddesses. In case Isis was so honored, the substance from which the tablets were made differed according to the relative dignities of the deities. The tables consecrated to Jupiter and Apollo were of gold. Those to Diana, Venus, and Juno were of silver. Those to the other superior gods of marble. Those of the lesser divinities of wood. Tables were also made of metals corresponding to the planets governed by the various celestials. As food for the body is spread on a banquet table, so on these sacred altars were spread the symbols which, when understood, fed the invisible nature of man. In his introduction to the table, Kreischer summarizes its symbolism thus, quote, "It teaches in the first place the whole constitution of the threefold world, archetypal, intellectual, and sensible. The supreme divinity is shown moving from the center of the circumference of a universe made up of both sensible and inanimate things, all of which are animated and agitated by one supreme power, which they call the Father Mind, and represented by threefold symbol. Here also shown three triads from the Supreme One, each manifesting one attribute of the first triumvirate. These triads are called the foundation, or the base of all things, and the table is also set forth the arrangement of distribution of those divine creatures that aid the Father Mind in the control of the universe. Here in the upper panel are to be seen the governors of the worlds, which each its fury, etherical, and material insignia. Here also in the lower panel are the fathers of fountains, whose duty it is to care for and preserve the principles of all things, of sustain the inviolable laws of nature. Here are the gods of the spheres, and also those who wander from place to place, laboring with all substances and forms, Zeona and Azonia, grouped together as figures of both sexes, with their faces turned to their superior deity. The Mensa Ithaca, which is divided horizontally into three chambers or panels, may represent the ground plan of the chambers in which the Ithaca mysteries were given. The central panel is divided into 7 parts or lesser rooms, and the lower has 2 gates, one at each end. The entire table contains 45 figures, first of importance, and a number of lesser symbols. The 45 main figures are grouped into 15 triads, of which 4 are in the upper panel, 7 in the central, and 4 in the lower. According to both Kircher and Levy, the triads are divided into the following manner. In the upper section, 1, PSV, Mendesian triad. 2, XZA, Ammonian triad. 3, BCD, Marmortian triad. FGH, Amortian triad. In the center section, and FYI, don't know if I'm saying those words right. GIK, Isaac triad. LMN, Hecatian triad. OQR, Morpheus triad. VSW, Ornphinic triad. XYZ, Niftian triad. What appears to be Greek, Seraphin triad. More Greek, Osirian triad, maybe not Greek, but it looks like Greek. In the lower section, don't know what that letter is, MN, Horian triad, Greek, Pandiochaian triad, Gnostic triad, and Illustric triad, which is all Greek letters that I don't know how to pronounce. Of the 15 triads, Krishna writes, the figures differ from each other in 8 highly important respects. According to form, position, gesture, act, remnant, headdress, step, and lastly, according to the hieroglyphics placed around them, whether these be flowers, shrubs, small letters, or animals. These 8 symbolic methods of portraying the secret powers of the figures are subtle reminders of the 8 spiritual senses of cognition by means of which the real self in man may be comprehended. To express the spiritual truth, the Buddhists used the wheel with 8 spokes and raised their consciousness by means of the Noble Eightfold Path. The ornamented border enclosing the 3 main panels of the table contains many symbols consisting of birds, animals, reptiles, human beings, and composite forms. According to one reading of the tablet, this border represents the 4 elements. The creatures are elemental beings. According to another interpretation, the border represents the archetypal spheres, and in its frenzy of composite figures are the patterns of those forms, which in various combinations will subsequently manifest themselves in the material world. The 4 flowers of the corners of the table are those which, because their blossom always face the sun and follow its course across the sky, are sacred emblems of that finer part of man's nature which delights in facing its creator. According to the secret doctrine of the Chaldeans, the universe is divided into 4 states of being: planes or spheres, archetypal, intellectual, sidereal, and elemental. Each of these reveals the others, the superior controlling the inferior receiving influence from the superior. The archetypal plane was considered synonymous with the intellect of the triune divinity. Within the divine, incorporeal, and eternal sphere are included of the lower manifestations of life, all that is, has been, or ever shall be. Within the cosmic intellect of all things, spiritual and material exists as archetypes, or divine thought forms, which is shown in the tablet by a chain of secret similes. In the middle region of the table appears all form containing personified spiritual essence, the source and substance of all things. From this proceed the lower worlds of 9 emanations in groups of 3, the orphic, the isomorphic, and the neophyton triads. Consider in the connection the analogy of the Kabbalistic Sitharoth, or the 9 spheres issuing the Kether, the crown, the 12 governors of the universe, the Menzinian, the Ammonian, and Momthidian, and Omphtidian triads, vehicles for the distribution of the creative influences as shown in the upper region of the table, are directed in their activities by the divine mind patterns existing in the archetypal sphere. The archetypes are abstract patterns formulated in the divine mind, and by them all the inferior activities are controlled. In the lower region of the table are the father fountains, the Horian, Pandortian, Thaostic, and Illustic triads, keepers of the great gates of the universe. These distribute to the lower worlds the influences depending from the governors shown above. In the theology of the Egyptians, goodness takes precedence over all things, partake of its nature to a higher or lower degree. Goodness is sought by all. It is the prime cause of causes. Goodness is self-diffused and hence exists in all things, for nothing can produce that which it does not have in itself. The table demonstrates that all is in God and God is in all. That is all, and each is in each. In the intellectual world are the indivisible spiritual counterparts of the creatures which inhabit the elemental world. Therefore, the lowest exhibitions, the highest, the corporeal declares the intellectual and invisible, is made manifest by its works. For this reason, the Egyptians made images of substance existing in the inferior sensible world to serve as visible exemplars of superior and invisible powers. To the corruptible images, they are assigned the virtues of the incorruptible divinities, thus demonstrating arcanely that this world is but the shadow of God, the outward picture of the paradise within. All that is in the invisible archetypal sphere is revealed in the sensible corporeal world by the light of nature. The archetypal and creative mind, first through the paternal foundation and afterwards through the secondary gods called intelligences, poured out the whole infinity of its powers by continuous exchange from highest to lowest. In their phallic symbolism, the Egyptians used the sperm to represent the spiritual spheres because each contains all that comes forth from it. The Chaldeans and Egyptians also held that everything which is a result dwells in the cause of itself and turns to that cause as the lotus to the sun. Accordingly, the supreme intellect, through its paternal foundation, first created light, the angelic world. Out of that light were then created the invisible hierarchies of beings, which some call the stars, and out of the stars the four elements and the sensible world were formed. Thus all are in all, after their respective kinds. All visible bodies or elements are in the invisible stars or spiritual elements, and the stars are likewise in those bodies. The stars are in the angels, and the angels in the stars. The angels are in the God, and God is in all. Therefore, all are divinely in the divine, angelically in the angels, and corporally in the corporeal world, and vice versa. Just as the seed is the tree folded up, so the world is God unfolded. Proclus says, every property of divinity permeates all creation and gives itself to all inferior creatures. One of the manifestations of the supreme mind is the power of reproduction, according to the species which it confers upon every creature of which it is the divine part. Thus souls, heavens, elements, animals, plants, and stones generate themselves each according to its pattern, but all are dependent upon one fertilizing principle existing in the supreme mind. The fecundative power, through and of itself, a unit, manifests differently through the various substances, for in the mineral it contributes to material existence, in the plant it manifests as vitality, and in the animal as sensibility. It imparts motion to the heavenly bodies, thought to the souls of men, intellectually to the angels, and super essentially to God. Thus, it is seen that all forms are one substance and of all life, of one force, and these are coexistent in the nature of the Supreme One. This doctrine was first expounded by Plato. His disciple Aristotle set it forth in these words. We say that this sensible world is an image of another. Therefore, since this world is vivid or alive, how much more then that other must live? Yonder, therefore, above the stellar virtues, stand another heaven to be obtained, like the heavens of the world beyond them, because they are of a higher kind, brighter and vaster, nor are they distant from each other like this one, for they are incorporeal. Yonder too exists an earth, not of inanimate matter, but vivid with animal life and all natural terrestrial phenomena like this one, but of other kinds of perfections. There are plants also in gardens and flowing water. There are aquatic animals, but of the nobler species. Yonder is air and life appropriate to it, all immortal. And although the life there is analogous to ours, yet it is nobler, seeing that it is intellectual, perpetual, and unalterable. For if anyone should object and ask, how in the world above do the plants, etc., above motion find footing? We should answer that they do not have objective existence, but they are produced by the primal author in an absolute condition and without exteriorization. They are therefore in the same case an intellect and soul. They suffer no defect, such as waste and corruption, since the beings yonder, the full of energy, strength, and joy, as living in a life sublime, and being the issue of one fount of one quality, compounded of all like sweet savors, delicate perfumes, harmonious color and sound, and other perfections. Nor do they move violently about, nor intermix, nor corrupt each other, but each perfectly preserves its own essential character, and they are simple and do not multiply, or as corporeal beings do. In the midst of the table is a great cover throne with a seated female figure representing Isis, but here called the pantomorphic IYNX. GRS Mead defines that IYNX as a transmitting intelligence. Others have declared it to be a symbol of universal being. Over the head of the goddess, the throne is surmounted by a triple crown, and beneath her feet is the house of material substance. The threefold crown here is symbolic of the triune divinity, called by the Egyptians the supreme mind, and described in Sefer Ha-Zohar as being hidden and unrevealed. According to the Hebrew system of Kabbalism, the tree of the Sitharoth was divided into two parts, the upper invisible and the lower visible. The upper consisted of 3 parts and the lower of 7. The 3 uncognizable Sitharoth were called Kether, the crown, Chochma, wisdom, and Binah, understanding. I don't know if I said that right. Sorry. There are 2 abstract to permit of comprehension, whereas the lower 7 spheres that came forth from them were within the grasp of human consciousness. The central panel contained 7 triads of figures. These represented the lower Sitharoth, of emanating from the concealed threefold crown over the throne. Kircher writes, the throne denotes the diffusion of the triform supreme mind along the universal paths of the 3 worlds. Out of these 3 intangible spheres emerges the sensible universe, which Plutarch calls the house of Horus, and the Egyptians the great gate of the gods. The top of the throne is in the midst of diffused serpent-shaped flames, indicating that the supreme mind is filled with light and life, eternal and incorruptible, removed from all material contact. How the supreme mind communicated his fire to all creations and creatures is clearly set forth in the symbolism on the table. The divine fire is communicated to lower spheres through the universal power of nature, personified by the world virgin Isis, here denominated the IYNX, or the polymorphous, all containing universal idea. The word idea is here used in the Platonic sense. Plato believed that there are eternal forms of all possible things which exist without matter. And to these eternal and immaterial forms, he gave the name of ideas. In the Platonic sense, ideas was the patterns according to which the deity fashioned the phenomenal or typical world. Krischer describes the 12 figures, 12. Wow, see, dyslexia, here we go. 21 figures in the central panel, thus 7 principal triads corresponding to 7 superior worlds are shown in the central section of the table. They all originate from the fiery invisible archetype, the triple crown of the throne. The first, the Orphanic or IYNX triad, VSW, corresponds to the vital and fiery world and is the first intellectual world called by the ancients the Ethereum. Zoroaster says it, oh, what rigorous rules thus world has. The second of Imbomorpheus triad, OQR, corresponds to the second intellectual ethereal world and is concerned with the principle of humidity. The third, or the Nephtian triad, XYZ, corresponds to the third intellectual and ethereal world and is concerned with fecundity. These are the three triads of ethereal worlds, which correspond to the Father Foundation. Then followed the four triads of the sensible or material worlds, of which the first two correspond to the sidereal worlds, GIQ, and namely Osiris and Isis, sun and moon, indicated by two bulls. They are followed by two triads, the Hecadian, LMN, and Seraphian, corresponding with the sublunary and subterranean worlds. These complete the seven worlds of the primary genie ruling the natural universe. Celius quotes Zoroaster: the Egyptians and the Chaldeans taught that there were seven corporeal worlds, worlds ruled by the intellectual powers. The first is of pure fire, the second, third, and fourth ethereal, the fifth, sixth, and seventh material, the seventh being the one called terrestrial and hater of light, and is located under the moon, compromising with itself the matter called funicus, or foundation. The seven plus the one invisible crown constitute the eight worlds. Plato writes that it is needful for the philosopher to know how the seven circles beneath the first one are arranged according to the Egyptians. The first triad of fire denotes life, the second water, over which rule the ambulomorphous divinities, and the third air, ruled by Nephta. From the fire the heavens were created, from the water the earth, and air was the mediator between them. In the Sifra Yetzirah, it is said that from the three originate the seven: the height, the depth, the east, the west, the north and south, and the holy temple in the center substanding them all. Is not the holy temple in the center, which great throne of many formed spirit of nature, which is shown in the middle of the tablet? What are the seven triads but the seven powers that rule over the world? Celius writes, the Egyptians worshipped the triad of faith, truth, and love, and the seven fountains. The sun as ruler, the fountain of matter, then the fountain of the archangels, the fountain of the senses, of judgment, of lightning, and of reflections, and of characters of unknown composition. They say that the highest material fountains are those of Apollo, Osiris, and Mercury, the fountains of the center of the elements. Thus they understood by the sun as ruler the solar world, by the material archangelic, the lunar world, by the fountain of the senses, the world of Saturn by judgment, Jupiter by lightning, Mars by that of the reflections or mirrors, the world of Venus by the fountain of characters, the world of Mercury. All these are shown by the figures in the center pane of the tablet. The upper panel contains the 12 figures of the zodiac arranged in four triads. The center figure in each group represents one of the four fixed signs of the zodiac. S is the sign of Aquarius, Z Taurus, C Leo, G Scorpio. These are called the fathers. In the secret teachings of the Far East, these four figures, the man, the bull, the lion, the eagle, are called the winged globes, or the four Maharajas, who stand upon the corners of creation. The four cardinal points or signs, P Capricorn, X Aries, B Cancer, F Libra, are called the powers. The four common signs, V Pisces, A Gemini, E Virgo, H Sagittarius, are called the minds of the four lords. This explains the meaning of the winged globes of Egypt. For the four central figures, Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio, called by Ezekiel the cherubim, are the globes. The cardinal and common signs are either side or the wings. Therefore, the 12 signs of the zodiac may symbolize by four globes, each with two wings. The celestial triads are further shown by the Egyptians as a globe, the father, from which issue a serpent, the mind, and the wings, the power. These 12 forces are the fabricators of the world, and from them emanate the microcosm, or the mystery of the 12 secret animals, representing in the universe the 12 parts of the world, and in man the 12 parts of the human body. Anatomically, the 12 figures in the upper panel may well symbolize the 12 convolutions of the brain, and the 12 figures in the lower panel, the 12 zodiacal members and organs of the human body. For man is a creature formed of 12 sacred animals, with his members and organs under the direction, control, and 12 governors of powers resident in the brain. A more profound interpretation is followed in the correspondence between the 12 figures in the upper panel and the 12 in the lower. This furnishes a key to one of the most arcane of ancient secrets: the relationship existing between the two great zodiacs, the fixed and the movable. The fixed zodiac is described as an immense dodecahedron, is 12 surfaces representing the outermost walls of abstract space. From each surface of the dodecahedron, our great spiritual power radiating inward becomes embodied as one of the hierarchies of the movable zodiac, which is a band of circumambulating so-called fixed stars. It's one of those words. Within the movable zodiac are posited the various planetary and elemental bodies. The relation of these two zodiacs to the sub-zodiacal spheres has a correlation in the repository system of the human body. The great fixed zodiac may be said to be representative of the atmosphere, the movable zodiac, the lungs, the sub-zodiacal worlds of the body. The spiritual atmosphere containing the vivifying energies of the 12 divine powers of the great fixed zodiac is inhaled by the cosmic lungs, the movable zodiac, and distributed by them through the constitution of the 12 holy animals, which are the parts and members of the material universe. The functional cycle is completed when the poisonous
alert from updates available.
The lower worlds collected by the movable zodiac are exhaled into the great fixed zodiac. There is to be purified by being passed through the divine natures of the 12 eternal hierarchies. I gotta shut that off. Sorry, guys. The table as a whole is susceptible of many interpretations. If the border of the table with its hieroglyphic figures be accepted as a spiritual source, then the throne in the center represents the physical body within which human nature is enthroned. From this point of view, the entire table becomes emblematic of the auric bodies of man, with the border as the outer extremity or shell of the auric egg. If the throne be accepted as a symbol of the spiritual sphere, the border typifies the elements, and the various panels surrounding the center one become emblematic of the worlds or planes emanating from one divine source. If the table be considered from a purely physical basis, the throne becomes symbolic of the generative system, and the table reveals the secret process of embryology as applied to the formation of immaterial worlds. If a purely physiological and anatomical interpretation be desired, the central throne becomes the heart of the embryomorphous triad, the mind, the Nephilim triad, the generative system, and the surrounding hieroglyphics, various parts and members of the human body. From the evolutionary viewpoint of the central gate becomes a point of both entrance and exit. Here also is set forth the process of initiation, in which the candidate, after passing successfully through the various ordeals, is finally brought into the presence of his own soul, which he alone is capable of unveiling. If cosmogony be the subject of consideration, the central panel represents the spiritual worlds, the upper panel the intellectual worlds, and the lower panel the material worlds. The central plane may also symbolize the 9 invisible worlds, and the creature marked T, the physical nature, and the footstool of Isis, the spirit of universe life. Considered in the light of alchemy, the central panel contains the metals and the borders of the alchemical process. The figure seated on the throne in the universal Mercury, the stone of the wise, the flaming canopy of the throne above is the divine sulfur, and the cube of earth beneath is the elemental salt. The three triads, or the paternal foundation in the central panel, represents the silent watchers, the three invisible parts of nature of man. The two panels on either side are the quaternary lower nature of man. In the central panel of 21 figures, this number is sacred to the sun, which consists of three great powers, each with 7 attributes, and by the Kabbalistic reduction, 21 becomes 3, or the Great Triad. If will yet be proved that the Table of Isis is directly connected with the Egyptian Gnosticism, for the Gnostic papyrus preserved in the Babylonian library, there is a different and direct reference to the 12 fathers or paternities, beneath whom are 12 fountains. That the lower panel represents the lower underworld, and further emphasized by the two gates, the Great Gate of the East and the Great Gate of the West, where in the Chaldean theology the sun rises and sets through the gates in the upper world, in the underworld, wherein wanders during the hours of darkness, as Plato was for 13 years under the instruction of the Magi Patheneth, Acalypse, I am not pronouncing that, and I will not pronounce that. Sebenithius, his philosophy consequently is permeated with the Chaldean and Egyptian system of triads. The Bembine table is a diagrammatic expression of the so-called Platonic philosophy, for it in its design is epitomised the entire theory of mystic cosmogony and generation. The most valuable guide to the interpretation of this table is the commentaries of Proclus on the theology of Plato. The Chaldean oracles of Zoroaster also contains many allusions to the theonic principles, which are demonstrated by the table, and I've read the Chaldean oracles of Zoroaster on this channel. The Theogony of Hesiod contains the most complete account of the Greek cosmogony myth. Orphic cosmogony has left its impress upon the various forms of philosophy and religion, Greek, Egyptian, and Syrian, which is contacted. Chief of the Orphic symbols was the mundane egg from which Phanes sprang into light. Thomas Taylor considers the Orphic egg to be synonymous with the mixture from bound and infinity mentioned by Plato and in the Philebus. The egg is furthermore the third intelligible triad and proper symbol of Demiurgus, whose auric body is the egg of the inferior universe. Eusebius, on the authority of Polyphori, declared that the Egyptians acknowledged one intellectual author or creator of the world under the name of Seninf, that they worshipped him in a statue of human form and dark blue complexion, holding in his hand a girdle and a scepter, wearing on his head a royal plume, thrusting forth an egg out of his mouth. While the Bembine table is rectangular shape, it signifies philosophically the Orphic egg of the universe with its contents. In esoteric doctrines, the supreme individual achievements is the breaking of the Orphic egg, which is the equivalent of the return of the spirit of nirvana, the absolute condition of the Oriental mystics. The New Pantheon by Samuel Boise contains 3 plates showing various sections of the Bembine table. The author, however, makes no important contribution to the knowledge of the subject. In the mythology and fables of the ancients explained from history, the Abe banner denotes a chapter to the consideration of Mensa Ithaca. After reviewing the conclusions of Montfalcon, Cariner, and Pignorus, he adds, I am the opinion that it was votive table, which some prince or private person had constructed to Isis as an acknowledgement for some benefit which he believed she had conferred upon him. Very interesting. So this tablet and table had a lot of depiction on it that was astrological, that had the fixed signs of the astrology, the zodiacs, all the signs and symbols, and has been fought over by, not fought, but argued about on what its representations are and what does it mean. It's very interesting how when we unfold history, how no matter what, there's always going to be arguments and there's always going to be different perceptions of what things are. And like us going through this work and going through all the works, figuring it out doesn't necessarily have anything to do or mean anything to us, but the process in which it's going through is what we need to hold, going through our history, learning the origins of things, why people did these things, why art and tables and tablets and everything was carved and made, and their symbology, so that we moving forward can get along and not fight over these interpretations. Here's co-host number 1. Good timing. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I do apologize. There are some words that names that are this long that they're not coming out. And not going to embarrass myself or get frustrated. Yes. Hopefully I'll get new teeth one day and I can start talking properly without thinking things are going to fly out of my mouth as I'm reading. Sending each and every one of you love and light. I hope you have an amazing day and rest of the week. I'll see you on the next one, guys. Bye.